Two Hotheads on Cannabis with Mike Cann and Heather Mack.
We're killing it! Killing it!
Saturdays, 3:30 to 5:30.
OnRegularRadio.com.
Back on Two Hotheads on Cannabis. And, wow, we had a great time with that band, For the Record. That was a good time.
And that was awesome. For the Record was just in the studio. If you missed it, you fucked up.
Yeah.
Because we just had some awesome live performance and some collaboration, rapping and punk rock, and it was pretty magical, man. It was pretty magical.
I was there. I was ready to spit, and then I backed off. You heard it on the air. I was like, I can't go after that. I can't.
Mike, it's all right. Well, we'll give you.
I was ready to go into my Mike Cann mode, though. I was like, oh.
Well, that's all good, because this is where you truly shine, Mike Cann.
It was awesome.
On the issues and the activism, where activism happens. And I'm going to keep saying that regardless of, of naysaying internet trolls.
It's like what we're doing today is activism, just the relationships. Andy wouldn't be doing activism if I hadn't become friends with these guys. That's the truth of it, That's what happens so often in this movement, and that's all we need to worry about. And what are we doing right now?
Right now we're about to have Rico Colibri, who is running the campaign for legalization in Colorado in 2012 with Initiative 70. And it would make consumption, possession, and limited personal cultivation a constitutional right in Colorado. And this is actually similar to something they're working on in Montana, which would make it legal for anyone 21 and up, and would allow commercial cannabis sales regulated similarly to existing tobacco sales. In addition, the proposal would remove any of the current laws and penalties associated with cannabis use, distribution, and cultivation, and would pave the way for industrial hemp. So basically, it sounds like it's hitting everything that we want it to hit. I mean, this is like the ideal marijuana reform legislation.
And based in Colorado. I mean, we have to realize, well, we'll talk to him about it, because he's also letting us know about this. Rico Colibri is the person behind the Colorado Initiative 70. We have him on the phone, and why don't we get into it? Can this be used in other states exactly as is, or does it need to be does it need to be worked on?
This is where I get to talk. Yeah. So basically, it could be used for the most part in other states. You would just have to make sure that you fine-tune it to existing statute in your given state. But what you'll notice, the way that we structure Initiative 70, we leave most of it in statute. Initiative 70 is mostly designed to limit the General Assembly from abusing cannabis users.
Okay. So can this be used directly in Massachusetts? Can you just put this whole Initiative 70 right in Massachusetts as it exists? Are you allowed to do referendums in Massachusetts?
Yes, we are.
Then yeah, I would say that other than, you'll notice we give a few citations to tobacco regulations inside the language. Those would have to be updated to match Massachusetts' existing or equivalent laws concerning tobacco regulations. But other than that, yeah, you could roll with it.
And really what you're saying is what I like to hear, because I feel like with cannabis, yeah, there's a lot of money to be made. There's nothing wrong with making a lot of money. But there's also, why don't we allow people to every person should benefit from it. And the easiest way to benefit from it is to allow people to grow 5 to 10 plants and not be taxed, and to use it like I grow cucumbers. I don't get taxed for that. Why can't we do the same with cannabis? And isn't that really what your law does, unlike a lot of the other laws that are out there?
Yeah, our law is actually written from the perspective of the cannabis user, and then we acknowledge, business, because we're in a capitalist society, but our primary concern is how the average person is affected. When we talk about prohibition, we're talking about, laws or rules that prohibit specific acts, and there's all this talk about ending prohibition, but most of the language that we see being floated nationally doesn't address these laws that prohibit these acts for the average individual. And that's the concern is, how do we end prohibition while keeping the majority of the laws that actually enforce the federal prohibition of marijuana on the books? At least here in Colorado, we have a competing initiative called Amendment 64, which has ballot status, and it only repeals a petty offense and a misdemeanor. And given some recent case laws we have at the appellate court level here in Colorado, 64 has actually been gutted before it could even pass. And that was one of the reasons we wrote Initiative 70. One, to show that you can have reasonable regulations that actually protect the average citizen, and it's not pie in the sky, hippy-dippy pipe dreams as some of these national organizations try to portray us, right? The people that are true activists were often called stoners against legalization. And what I would actually say is we're stoners against prohibition, and some of these national organizations are actually continuing the paradigm of prohibition, in my estimation, because it limits the market and makes it quite profitable.
Wow.
Now that's a serious claim.
Yeah, that is.
But
a serious
I think
claim.
it does have some backing to it, and definitely, I mean, it looks like from the language of this initiative that it is one of the more radical, legalization systems that's been suggested, because it's not just about legalizing, cannabis or legalizing medical cannabis or you're going a lot further, and you're trying to make it also be, socially acceptable within, to like the part that you say about, letting people go down to the coffee shop and smoke a joint outside. I mean, that's like a huge cultural revolution in and of itself. Although for Colorado, it might be a little bit ahead of the times in certain places with that, but that's still pretty significant. So what do you think? Like, I'm assuming there is some resistance. What are the arguments that you guys are hearing against this from people?
Well, the arguments that I've gotten are actually a little different, you might think. I've actually been told by multiple proponents of Amendment 64 that our language is better. I've been told by their supporters that our language is better. Mm-hmm. The only argument that I've heard right now is that they have ballot status and we don't. And I would say that is a valid argument, but that speaks more to how the primary donors behind all of these different national organizations are kind of, in my estimation, being manipulated by these lobbyist groups. We have to remember these national organizations are not activist groups. You can go to their websites and it will tell you that they're a lobbyist group. And they're kind of controlling the purse strings, and as such, they're controlling the market through these restrictive sets of language. When we think of medical marijuana, at least here in Colorado, we're a little ahead of the curve of the rest of the nation, but when we think of medical marijuana, if you notice, the laws keep consecutively getting a little more restrictive and, in my estimation, bad. But all of those sets of language are almost always financed and written by the same small group of individuals out of D.C. And so, the criticisms that we got really are, your language is great, but you don't have the money.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of a catch-22? Because the whole point is to be getting the money for the more radical things, but in fact, most people that are the main funders of these, and this happened even with Prop 19, definitely to an extent, of people being nervous about going too far,
and I think that's
trying to be conservative.
I think when the rational mind in the movement will say, these folks that run these $1 million campaigns, that get a couple $1 million to run an initiative for medical or legalization that gets ballot status, that gets a whole campaign. The people that run those campaigns want to win them with the highest number possible, and that means playing it absolutely the most safest that you can play it, which sucks because it doesn't grow us. It doesn't. All the things that Rico was talking about, those things don't matter to them. All that matters is that number, that they get 79, or that they don't lose one vote. So, I think that's what we're up against.
I actually have a counter to that. Here in Colorado, at least, when they were going around getting their signatures to get ballot status, the language that they use in the press, which you can kind of do a Google search and find, and what they were actually saying, being the petition circulators, they were actually telling people, do you want to legalize marijuana, and do you want to end prohibition? Well, those are very radical, libertarian type of words to throw out. And the thing that's interesting is people actually signed those petitions. Average citizens signed based on the concept of full legalization and ending prohibition. Now, legally speaking, no state can actually legalize. This is kind of a catchphrase that's being abused. Unless marijuana is defederalized at the federal level, the only thing a state can do is remove state-level enforcement of those drug laws that ultimately are derived from the Controlled Substance Act at the federal level, which is derived from the Single Conventions Treaty at an international level. So a state can merely create kind of a state-level interstate non-enforcement, kind of like what happens in Amsterdam. And when we talk about proposing to regulate like tobacco, well, that's what Amsterdam has done, and it's been done for a very long time. And I would also propose that any regulations that are appropriate for a substance like tobacco that kills about 500,000 people annually in North America alone certainly are good enough for a substance that kills zero and actually heals individuals across the country where medical programs exist. And you know, this idea that it's radical to regulate like a substance that we know is a known killer, I don't think it's really that radical. It sounds very practical to me personally.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. Now, I just think that's funny that they're piggybacking off of your language. Now, so what happens? How can you move forward with Initiative 70 without getting the required signatures? What's the next step?
Well, you mean if let's say we don't get ballot status this year? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah.
Well, this is what our thoughts are. Obviously, we're trying to get money, and we're looking at different sorts of what's called crowdfunding or money bombs. That's kind of like what Ron Paul's been doing to stay in the race here, harassing the GOP.
Yep.
Where basically a bunch of little people can give you $5. People need to understand that the average citizen can make a change. If you bought Starbucks today, you can afford to end prohibition.
Yes.
You go online and you can donate, and we have a website, equalizecannabis.com. Now, if we don't get ballot status and 64 doesn't get ballot status, we actually believe that the national organizations, we call them the nationals, won't come back here so quickly because they've blown millions of dollars in Prop 19 and now Amendment 64. We have to remember, this is about 3 people that fund all of this nationally. And I'm assuming at some point they're going to reassess their relationship with these national organizations that keep throwing money out into the streets, you know, and catch it on fire and it's gone. So what we know what's going on in Colorado is that it's going to be very close no matter who's on the ballot status, because Colorado is a pretty conservative state. I know that, you know, nationally the news might make it seem otherwise, but we've had some pretty strong pushbacks here on our medical program.
Right.
You know, we have the U.S. Attorney's Office issuing letters. We have patients being arrested. We've had these different court cases that have now ruled there isn't a right, and basically you can lose your house, your job, your kids, your job, your firearm licenses, your occupational licenses, your school grants, etc. So right now it's kind of we're kind of we're in the fire right now. We're out of the frying pan. We're in the fire, and what we're trying to do with 70 is reach out to other states like your state and let these true grassroots activists know, 1, you can do it. 2, you don't have to have the $1 million guy behind you. 3, the national organizations, in our estimation, we start calling them grass tops. They feed off the roots, but they're nowhere near the roots. And people need to know that it's average citizens that have always made progressive change, whether it's women's rights, gay rights, drug policy, whatever. It's always been the average person, not some millionaire.
Yeah. Right, absolutely.
Yep.
So where can we go to, help support this? And
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say www.equalizecannabis.com. You can do donations, but we're switching merchant accounts. And so, if you go donate now, it's wonderful, but we'll get less money if you donate 3 days from now. But we're certainly looking to do what's called crowdfunding, and you guys should look into that locally out there. It's exactly how Ron Paul's been raising $7 million, $20 million, $10 million. It's just a bunch of concerned people that are willing to put their money where their values are and cough up $5.
Yep.
Exactly. And just like you said, if you bought Starbucks today or, whatever else, Dunkin' Donuts.
Cordoba.
You can pull it together and send you guys some money.
Rico Colibri, thank you for calling in today, and thank you for spreading the news on this, because I did read. We both read it, and we're impressed by this initiative, so we want to see the ideas of it go everywhere. And we want to eventually have that here. I mean, that's the goal. Yeah. Well, if you guys need any help, let me know. I'm more than willing to research the statutes out there and try to fine-tune it for you. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Rico, for being on the show. We really appreciate it. And that was Equalize Cannabis, correct? Correct, because we're not legalizing it. We're treating it equally. Equal rights. Equally. Equal laws, equal rights, equal protections. There you go. Absolutely. I like that a lot.
All right, so equalizecannabis.com. You can go and donate to this initiative, Initiative 70, one of the most progressive legalization proposals that's been brought out, and we'd like to see it succeed, at least if not in this particular election, but as a way of spreading the word and getting it out to other people that this is, what we should be going for.
Yeah.
Definitely. Why not go all the way?
All the way.